Okay, hello everyone. Welcome and greetings to a couple of nerds talking about collecting video games. I'm Andrew. You probably may hear me from Team Respawn. I'm here with Jake, aka Pancake Jr. How are you, sir?
I am doing just fine. Thank you for having me on here.
Oh, 100%. Likewise, I'm going to hit you with a no you. Uh,
All right. Well, there's no response to that besides K.
well, thank you. Um,
You're welcome.
So we decided to get together and record for a period of time here to talk about collecting games. You and I are very passionate about physical games, the importance of kind of physical game as a
Hmm.
medium during a time when there's a lot of the rise of digital games
Right.
and the physical games kind of becoming more and more uncommon.
Hmm.
So we created some questions for ourselves and kind of share experiences because I think what's so cool about this hobby is there's not really one predefined area. Like you can kind of go and fall in a rabbit hole for either a particular
Yeah.
system or a niche or whatever. So I know you're quite passionate about that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've been following limited run games and all these stores. And just I've always gotten my games physical, and it was a bit of a stretch for me to even start a Steam account
Mm,
because that felt so weird when back when Steam came out or when I discovered Steam,
yeah.
even that felt weird to me. So I've always been a physical game person.
So let's just go ahead and dive into the questions here. So we're gonna kind of list a question, and then we both have individual answers. So I'll throw the first one at you. When
Hmm.
did you start collecting games, and what really got you into the hobby of collecting physical games?
Yeah, when like I said, I've always been a physical games kind of person. I always preferred to have my games physical when I could. But I really started collecting um, physical games, I guess, around 2018-ish, right after I got my Nintendo Switch, is when I started getting more into the indie games, and then most of those are digital, and I wanted them physical, and that's how I discovered all these shops where you can buy these usually digital only games physically. So, and that was around 2018. I had already been buying my Nintendo games since the Switch came out in 2017. But then I really started collecting in 2018, and that was when I discovered Special Reserve games.
So I guess my story is a little uh, not as defined as yours. I've kind of always preferred physical games for consoles.
Hmm.
My first console was a PS1, and yeah, I really love some of those older games. I've kind of just always preferred it. I've always enjoyed. See, I'm at that point in time where when I was young, manuals were still included in boxes, and this was really before. Yeah, they were still in color, like they had
Yeah.
a lot of detail and thought into them, but
And we didn't think much about it.
no, and then then manuals started coming in black and white. They removed the color, and
Hmm.
then manuals just had it was a one pager like health and safety information, and now it's nothing at all. They have that
Yeah, nothing.
the health and safety information is on the reverse side of of the cover art, right?
Hmm.
So now, like, it's sad when you open a game and you see a manual. You're surprised, you're like, oh,
Hmm.
they did a manual.
Yeah, I
How
remember
thoughtful.
these things.
That's right. But and I've always preferred physical games for consoles, but I really started getting into it probably around 2019. I think when you're a kid and you have games, you don't really understand what you have. You just kind of are always looking at what's next. But so like what I ultimately ended up doing was is I traded in a lot of my games, and I regret that now because a lot of them are either really expensive or they're hard to find or
Hmm.
it's just not easy to acquire them. So
Hmm.
now I always make the joke like I'm diamond hands when I acquire a game physically. I'm just never selling it unless I get a
Right.
duplicate or whatever, but I'm
Hmm.
always going to just hang on to my games.
Yeah, it would take extreme measures for me to let go of my games too.
Yeah. So we're gonna, I guess, talk about a good point to talk about the platforms that we collect for. I've
Yes.
always been really close to Xbox, so really Xbox 360 I think is the sweet spot for me.
Hmm.
For current releases, if there's a cheap Xbox One game, I'll pick it up. Any of the PlayStation games, if it's available for a decent price, I'll pick them up. So I own PS1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It doesn't really matter which PlayStation. If it's a good game I know I like, I'll good
Hmm.
price, I'll pick it up. And notably recently Switch, and I think you really turned me onto that through Limited Run and so all
Yes.
of the ports on that machine. So I think you
The
could probably
good
talk.
stuff.
That's right. You could probably talk a little bit better about the Switch.
Oh yeah. So really, I have Nintendo to thank for making me a physical video game collector. Um, and it's really because with physical video games, you have like a sense of ownership, but even more so with physical video games for a device that you can take with you, like the Switch. I always felt like for a console, um, like all your disc-based consoles or the Wii or the Wii U, I didn't collect for those.
Mm,
Um, I only really collect for the Switch, or go backwards to other portable game consoles. And I think that's because in my mind, it's like, if I can't take it with me everywhere, then do I really have it? And like, you still do, of course, but for me, it's like, I don't know. That's just a thing for me. Like, I have to be able to take it with me anywhere I want. And that makes me feel like I really, really own it.
right.
Um, so that's what I collect on, and that's why I collect on the Nintendo Switch. Mainly, that's what I collect for most recent Nintendo console. But I will sometimes go backwards and I'll collect games um, for the Game Boy Advance. Like your Pokemon games. I've got all of those. Not in the boxes. I would prefer to have them all in the box, but those are those are very expensive these
They
days.
are. They are.
Um, and I've recently been getting into buying like original Game Boys and Game Boy Colors, and I wanna mod them and like make the ultimate edition, with the backlit
Mm,
screen and stuff. So I'm slowly starting to get into those. Um, I have a lot of games for my DS and 3DS. I wouldn't say I collect for those though. Those are just I just have them because I never got rid of the cases. Um, so there's some that I have, but nothing will beat my Nintendo Switch collection. That is definitely my largest collection. Everything else is pitiful in
that's
comparison.
that's right. We actually have a question down here later on in the document, but it's a good time to talk about it now. The current
Hmm.
size of our collection.
Yeah.
I There's this great app. It's called Game Eye and allows you
Hmm.
to like scan the barcodes of your games or put in games for systems, and it will keep track of a value and how many you have. So right now, I'm at 504 games across 19 different systems.
Mm.
That is a lot. I will say, give myself a little bit of credit that that's
That
over.
is that.
It's acquired over a very long period of time, and I would actually say probably at least half of it is still from my childhood.
Yeah, that is cool. That is a very, very impressive collection. It's way bigger than mine.
So there, I also think that with game pricing, well, actually, let me ask you: do you know the total size of your collection today?
Yes. Well, mostly because there's some that I could not record in Game I, but it's about 155 games.
Okay.
About 155, and let me do a quick filter here um, to see how many of them are just Nintendo Switch. Uh, Let me see. Hmm.
So for mine, the one I probably have the most for is Xbox 360. I have 114 games for that console. So like that's 20% of my entire collecting library, and it gets really much smaller from there. Like 51 for Xbox One, 11 for N64,
Hmm.
7 for GameCube. I have 67 on Switch. That's my second biggest platform, and then 53 on PS4, 46 on PS2. So you'll
Okay, here we go. I have 111 of my games out of the 155 are Nintendo Switch.
wow. Okay. So
So that's
you're
2/3 is Nintendo Switch.
yeah, I mean your Switch library is essentially double the size of mine.
Mm.
Nintendo Switch, a lot of game collectors I'll see on Reddit will say that there's like a Switch tax, right? Like game prices are generally higher on the Switch. How do you
Right.
feel about current prices in the gaming market? We saw a huge increase right when 2020, the COVID outbreak started. There was a huge spike
Yeah.
in game prices. So, and Switch is more expensive normally on top of that. So how do you feel
Hmm.
about the market?
Well, a lot of the times it's the way I see it, it's a bit pricey, but it's fair. Most of the time, that's what I think. There are some rare cases where things are just way too expensive. Not to call any certain company out, but I'm going to. I am 8-bit. I bought from them before, and they make good stuff, but they typically will price things double what I am usually willing to pay. So maybe something on limited run might be 75, but on I am 8-bit it would be 150, which is just too much for me.
Yeah.
Um, as far as retail prices go, Nintendo games, I like the flat rate of usually 60. It's usually 60, and I haven't found a game that's more than that, if unless it comes with like extra goodies. So $60, I think is I think is pretty fair, and then it lower than that is even better.
I think the kind of umbrage I take with the pricing for the Switch, and I can understand it because you are the audience where the current pricing of Switch games makes sense, right? So,
Hmm.
an example could be, I don't know. There's plenty of ports. Like let's just say the Assassin's Creed Rebel Collection, for example.
Hmm.
I think it's normally retail for 40, but it often goes on sale for 20.
Hmm.
I think that's really fair for someone who's never played these games before. If you if you approach it from a different angle, for example, someone like me that played these games when they released, I'm seeing this price tag and I'm saying, well, okay, Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag, and Rogue, they both came out in the same year, 2013 or 2014. I think it
Which
was
is pretty
20.
old.
I mean, yeah, it's 8 years old. Do you want to charge that much for an 8-year-old game? And it's actually kind of a downgrade. If you look at Digital Foundry videos to,
Hmm.
PS4 and Xbox One, sometimes it's hard to justify the cost of some of these ports. Both first party and third party are quite expensive to acquire for on Switch, and like Nintendo, they don't really drop the pricing on their games. They go on sale slightly, but
Right,
and
right,
I can understand it from Nintendo's perspective because when you're selling 30 million copies of Pokemon Shield at $60, there you don't need to drop the price. It will sell no matter what you price it at.
right. And I like that for Nintendo, they don't go they don't go over $60 like that. That's as high as it will go. Um, and I like the uniformity, and I like there to not be a question. You can get a Pokemon game for the same as you could get a Mario game for the same as you could get a Zelda game. All of those, and they're all very good games that I would pay that price for.
Yeah, I think the problem I kind of have is the price never drops. Usually, publishers will drop the price over time. So it's like, why wait a year or two to play the newest Nintendo Switch game that's first party when it's never going to drop in price? You might as well just buy it release day because you know that price is never changing.
Right.
Whereas usually, if you're r/patient gamer territory, you can wait a year or two or three, and the price will be cheaper, and the game will be patched. But
Mm.
I think that's kind of outside the scope of just general collecting.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, I think that the pricing of the current market is really ridiculous. There's a lot of games that I think are way overvalued, and I think a lot of people use their stimulus money when they were bored sitting at home to get back into game collecting, which is fine. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to gatekeep this hobby.
Right.
But I think between that, inflation, and the rise of grading video games, which I despise,
Yeah.
has really caused these prices to just skyrocket. And I really don't see the market correcting itself in a major fashion anytime soon. I unfortunately do think these prices are here to stay because the
Yeah.
demand is still there.
I think if anything, I think they're going to go up as more people get into it, because games that you get from limited run games or old games, they're not making any more of them. What's made is made. And when more people get into this hobby, they're not going to make more for the new people, which means it's going to thin out how many games one person can have of the same type of game.
And
Like, if that makes sense. I can't have two of a game anymore. I can barely have one of it.
yeah, yeah, it's limited run creates an interesting dynamic in the market because people in the old days, or even today for older systems, they'll try to get what's called full sets, where they get every game released for a console. And like
Hmm.
usually N64 is the easiest one to do because there's only I think it's 296 unique games on that platform,
Hmm.
and most of those are not astronomically expensive or even hard to acquire. So I think a lot of collectors will go for that. But
Hmm.
today, you have the rise of all of these limited publishers like Limited Run, Super Rare, 8-Bit, whatever.
Hmm.
And it's going to make it next to impossible to get full complete
Yeah.
sets of these consoles. I don't think you'll ever see someone get a full complete set of Switch or PS4. It's just it's too hard.
It's way too hard. There's tens of thousands of games physical on the Switch,
Yeah. And
and I don't think that's a bad thing either.
well, I have spent a decent amount of money on my Switch collection, and I'm proud of it. But I only have 60 or so, 65 games or so. I'll go on this. Yeah, if you want to see how many games people do buy for the Switch, there's a subreddit. I think it's called NS Collectors, Nintendo Switch Collectors, and
Yeah, that
there
sounds right.
there'll be people that will share pictures of celebrating 500 physical Switch games. I've seen one guy say like 2,000 Switch games collected for.
Yeah,
And
that's insane to me.
so I'm thinking, okay, let's just I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and say that your average price per game is $40, which
Hmm.
you might get some cheaper, some more expensive, but let's just say
Hmm.
overall $40. 2,000 games, that's $80,000.
Yeah,
I,
that's insane.
I don't think you would ever play 2,000 games in your life if you tried. If you played a
No,
game every day, a unique game every day, it would take you over 3 years. Or I'm sorry, that's a lie. 6 years to do it.
even more. And it's ridiculous. And I can guarantee you, some of those games would be like My Little Pony, or like
Yeah.
now-
It's just crap.
like, you might be a My Little Pony fan out there, and that's okay. But or something else that's like some stupid game. There's got to be some stupid games in a collection that size.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. So, speaking of all the games out there, where do you usually buy your games? If
Uh,
you to buy a brand new game.
yeah. So the first place I bought my games, just your general retail games game stores like GameStop. That's where I usually do my pre-orders for all your Nintendo published games. I'll sometimes go to Walmart or Best Buy, but when I really started collecting the physical video games, I would go to limited run games. That's where you get all your usually digital only games. Special reserve games. They're in the same area as limited run games, except special reserve games publishes or releases games only published by Devolver Digital, whom I love.
Mm-hmm.
I also will buy games from Fangamer. They maybe have like 10 or so games on there. The good thing is they're not limited, so anyone can go to Fangamer and pick up a game, um, like Hollow Knight or Undertale. Those are the two I got from Fangamer. Um, I'll also buy occasionally from I Am 8-Bit, even though they are a bit more expensive. Um, and then every now and then I'm always looking at websites like Signature Edition, Super Rare, Strictly Limited. Those are a bit more niche, and I check those to make sure a digital game that I was looking for doesn't come out on there instead of limited run.
Right.
The main places I buy from are limited run and special reserve games, though.
It kind of depends on my platform of choice of what I want to kind of collect for them. I try to have the mindset that I'll never buy a game unless it's on sale. It's very
Mm-hmm.
rare exception these days. I really do think the last like 3 games I paid full price for were besides like the Pokemon games is like Mass Effect Legendary Edition and like Red Dead 2.
Mm-hmm.
And like that was 2018. I think Mass Effect was 2020 or 2021. I can't remember. And then the Pokemon games had like just the Diamond and Pearl ones had just come out.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, if it's limited run, like you have to pay the price that they have it listed for. Otherwise, you're
Right,
gonna
but
pay.
even then, yeah, you're saving by buying it at the regular price.
That's right.
Because if you don't, it's going to be probably double that at least
Right. And
on eBay.
so I don't really go out of my way for a particular system. I kind of go in moods where for a few weeks, I'm like, okay, let's see what I can beef up on this system. And so, like, just a couple of months ago, it was PS4. Like, I got the complete Kingdom Hearts collection and, some of the Sony first party exclusives on PS4.
Yeah.
And right now, I'm actually kind of not really aiming for anything. And Mr. Scout. And that's because my Steam Deck delivery is incoming any week now. Probably by the end of October, I'm hoping to have it. So I think that's really going to have an impact on where I'm collecting for, because I'm not sure if I'm gonna want to really pursue collecting on Switch beyond limited run stuff and first party, because I feel like the ports that are on Switch probably will just be better and cheaper to get on Steam, which kind of goes against everything about being a physical collector. But there's
Right. Yeah,
no
I was going to
sense in me
say
buying. I don't want to buy it
having a-
twice.
yeah. I completely agree. And I was going to say that having a Steam Deck, and I guess the invention of the Steam Deck, the physical game market is probably going to take a hit. There's going to be less demand for physical video games, especially if you can have almost everything you want portable, including your whole Steam library. And people's Steam libraries, oh my goodness, they're
Well,
massive.
I love physical games, and of course that's really the point of this whole show. But I really have to give a shout out to the way Steam has approached their libraries, where, with extreme rare exception, when you buy something on Steam, you really do own it, even if it's delisted.
Right.
I think one of the first major example of a game you already bought for being taken away from you is coming up, and that's Assassin's Creed Liberation, which is a port of a PS Vita game. It's a horrible Assassin's Creed game, and everyone hates it, but they're actually removing it from your Steam library, I think, in a few weeks or so, and it's been delisted for stores for a while. But I think that's really the first example of a game being removed from digital libraries. And so I think if the biggest example you can come up with is, since Steam was created till now, is Assassin's Creed Liberation, I think you're actually kind of okay.
Yeah. If it's a terrible game like that.
And there's sites like Humble Bundle that can get you involved in that platform for fairly cheap. But I think it's a great way to kind of get around, this really steep market with physical games. I think why we see so much piracy today, for especially for Nintendo consoles, is people love them, and the demand is so strong for such a
Mm-hmm.
consistent period of time that that keeps those prices up, and that kind of can discourage people from coughing up the cash to play these games. They might as well just pirate it and emulate it on their PC.
Right, because if you want to, the classics are always going to be classics. They have stood the test of time for 40 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's been more than 40 years. So those games are always going to be as good as everyone says they are, and they're not going to keep making those games. So the demand is always growing, it's always there, and it's only getting harder to play them.
Yeah, and I think the solution is backwards compatibility and embracing legacy stuff. Obviously, you can't be
Yeah.
like, "Hey, we're gonna make this Switch backwards compatible with the physical NES carts." Like that's not gonna
Yeah,
happen.
that'll never happen. That would be ridiculous. I mean, if it did happen, I I would lose my mind. I wouldn't even know what to think. That
I,
I,
I
I, I can't even think about that. But
well, we actually had lunch today, and I had mentioned that the best console manufacturer that's done this the best so far is Microsoft, because even though you could get the Series X, which is their fourth generation Xbox,
mhm.
it's original Xbox 360, Xbox One, and now Series X, and even though it's a select library, your Series X could play select original Xbox games with that original disc that you bought, say in like 2001 or 2003.
Mhm.
17 years later, that same disc will work on the new console.
Which is amazing.
That's how it should be. But I
That
think
it is.
with cartridge-based systems, it's probably a little bit harder. That's why you only see a couple
Yeah.
generations.
Also, those those games are way younger than Nintendo's games.
Right.
They're less than half as old. So there's a lot of history but between Nintendo's first game and now, and Microsoft's first game or games and now. Um but I do think Nintendo needs to, I mean, catch up a little bit and
Mm-hmm.
make some of their old games more accessible and more, you know, playable by everyone on their newest console. That's something that they've always been about, you know, making games that anyone can play, even someone who's never picked up a video game or ever picked up a controller before.
Right.
And what better way to illustrate that belief than to make your original games playable and accessible to everyone on your most recent console? That's how
They
I see it.
they usually just do what, like two generations, like 3DS could play DS, DS could play GBA, and then
Hmm.
like Super NES could play NES. So I bet you
Hmm.
like Switch 2 or whatever they call it, Super Switch, it'll play regular Switch games.
Yeah, I better.
Yeah, I think they understand how, and Wii U could play Wii games. I mean, so I do
Hmm.
think that the next they're going to have to make sure the next Switch or whatever they call it is going to be back compat, because Switch is going to
Hmm.
go down. I think now in top three best selling consoles of all time. I think it's like might be top four. I think it's PS2 is. I don't think anyone ever dethroned PS2, and then
Wasn't the Switch coming close?
no, Switch is
I'm pretty sure
outsold.
it was.
Switch is outsold PS4. Um, Let me look it up. Console, if I could spell
Didn't
life.
it outsell the Wii?
It did.
Yeah.
That's from 2020. No, thank you. Yeah, so Switch is number 5. I mean, I think it's gonna overtake PS4 because they're not really manufacturing PS4s anymore. They are
Hmm.
slightly to compensate with the lack of PS5 production. But yeah, I mean, I think Switch is going to and also probably going to overtake the Game Boy as well. I mean, they're right next to each other.
Right. Also, um, the Switch is the only, I would say, the only current console in this list because they're not
Hmm.
making any more PS2s, DSs, Game Boys, or PS4s, but they are making more Switches. So the Switch is still going up. It's only about halfway through its life cycle as of right now. I forget who said it, but it was it was like maybe someone who worked at Nintendo, one of the higher ups, not Miyamoto. He makes the games. One of the executives or someone, but they said it's about halfway through its life cycle right now.
Yeah, so
So the Switch it's
it's
definitely going to dethrone a couple of these.
yeah. Well, let's talk about the downsides to collecting, and I have
Yeah.
some thoughts on this. So,
Okay.
like I was saying previously, I think it's expensive to get into this. If you're a hobbyist for game collecting or playing games,
Hmm.
like I was saying, unless you're gonna really get in all in on Steam, it's a very expensive hobby.
It is.
Your hardware eventually is no longer supported, and that's just natural. I mean, we get new
Hmm.
technology, things get better, console makers move on. And I think ultimately, if you get to really ancient stuff, you're going to probably want redundancy with your hardware, meaning like you may want to have two original Xboxes, you may want to have
Yeah.
two original Dreamcasts or whatever, because if it goes out, you probably got to cough up a pretty penny to get another machine,
Hmm.
which is just further increasing the cost of your barrier to entry. And
Yeah.
so I think for a lot of folks, if you're just casually getting into it, emulation is probably the way that most people are going to go.
Hmm.
But for those who want, pure natural gameplay on the dedicated hardware it was built for,
Hmm.
it's expensive. The price can add up unless you
Yeah.
focus on one system. Then I think it's a little bit easier. Like if you're like, I just want PS2, so I'll
Yeah.
get like four PS2s and like all these games. I think you're okay.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I've been collecting. I mainly just get stuff on the Switch. I For me, I think the Switch it's probably my favorite console. I'm not going to think too much about it right now because that's a tough choice. But that's kind of how I'm doing it, just collecting on the Switch. Um, but yeah, it is an expensive hobby to get into. And my biggest pet peeve is scalpers because they make it hard for ordinary people to get into game collecting. So if
Mm,
there's a limited release of something and a scalper, some guy with a whole lot of money comes in and buys them all before you can even get one, and then he sells them for a jacked up price, that's not fair.
right.
Uh, like you can't call yourself a fan of video games if you scalp and do stuff like that because you buying so many games and selling them for a jacked up price, now there's a lot of people that won't be able to play that game, that won't be able to experience it, even if they're not a collector. What if that was their one favorite game that they wanted, and now they can't have it because a scalper got it and is selling it for $100 when they only had $50? That's my biggest pet peeve, just dealing with scalpers. Um, I will say places like Limited Run and Special Reserve have now started doing open pre-orders, which a lot of people don't like because it means there's a longer period of time between when you buy the game and when you actually receive the game. But if that means that no one can scalp the game, I don't care how long I have to wait. I want to see the scalpers get mad at that.
Yeah.
That just makes me happy seeing scalpers say like, "Oh man, that's not fair. I want the game now. You're making it wait too long. Well, all these games aren't limited anymore. I don't care about that. I want as much people to be able to have a game and play it physically as possible."
I think there's a lot of people that make some interesting arguments of whether limited run is actually beneficial to game collecting or if it makes it worse. And I think really the biggest problem is that when that initial first run is over, that's it. They're never doing it again.
Hmm.
And I don't think that's entirely the best way to go about it. I think the reason why their games are in limited quantities and they only do one pre-order is because they're a small business.
Right.
Now they've been swooped up by a giant conglomerate, so that might change moving forward. But
That could. I didn't think about that.
I think that if they're gonna offer, see, I like their mission, which is offering physical games that of titles that were previously available digitally, and at least
Hmm.
there's another avenue to collect a game that limited run published if you miss out, and that is, either to pay the tough price online or it's probably available digitally on the Switch. So I think that it's a tough call if you can't afford the open pre-order thing, but I'm hoping they'll do additional runs. But they also publish games through their distribution thing that they make in perpetuity, and I think that's like an example is
Hmm.
like the Crisis games I've noticed are on there now, and
Yeah.
To the Moon is on there. So they're kind of dabbling in that as well, and I hope they can do that in the future.
Yeah, I do too. Another point I wanted to make is it's talking about the hardware. And it's true that eventually the hardware will become outdated. And you won't be able to play games on it. Um, well, I guess my point is you won't be able to play current games on it, but you can still collect for any console because the games they're going to be harder to get once history progresses and new stuff comes out. But you can still get stuff for the old consoles. It's just going to get harder if it's not current.
Yeah, I think they remaster old games too to bring to new consoles, and they make
Right.
like compilation ports of old stuff. Like the Castlevania collection is a good example of a lot of
Yes.
stuff.
I love collections like that.
So with game preservation, I have a long answer and opinion about this topic, but really to put my point across the best about allowing people to play games as time goes on is I think game preservation is incredibly important, and
Hmm.
I think the majority of game publishers don't understand the importance that they play in game preservation,
Hmm.
whether that's physical or digital. Ultimately, I think it's easier to acquire stuff digitally through Steam, so you can
Yeah.
play it for forever on new machines and stuff. But for consoles, I understand that printing will eventually end. Where I really take umbrage is delisting of digital games for no reason whatsoever,
Hmm.
or removing online functionality to a lot of features are
Right.
unplayable, or in some games, in the case like Battleborn, it just doesn't work at all anymore because it's a
Hmm.
always online required game, and that drives me nuts.
Yeah.
However, some console manufacturers, and I'm pointing the finger at Nintendo here, they make it sometimes inherently difficult to play some of the older titles, which drives up the demand for the game prices and piracy, which is it's really hard to play some of these older titles at a good price or accessibly. And
Hmm.
it's either emulation through piracy or to pay a high price. And I do think that what Nintendo's done with the Switch on playing the older titles through Nintendo Switch Online, which you
Hmm.
can play NES, Super NES, and then you can pay extra on top of that to do N64, is unacceptable in my opinion. I think
Yeah.
you really should allow people to buy this a la carte and play it. Sony's a little bit better. They finally figured out back and pat on modern systems. I can't believe it took them this long, but you have to buy your games digitally, even if you own them physically. And
Hmm.
again, I think Xbox and Steam do it the best, where if you already own it physically, you can still continue to play it. So it's a long-winded answer, but I
Yeah.
think
No.
as an industry, they need to do better about preservation.
Yeah. I totally agree. And as much as it pains me to say, because I'm a huge fan of Nintendo, um, I wish they would release their games from their tight grip, and really give them to us. That I hate streaming services because a streaming service or a subscription service is the number one way to make me feel like I don't actually own it. It's a constant drip of money, and I want to pay one time for something and have it and never have to buy it again.
Yep.
Or and it goes the same way for like if I'm going to make something. If I make a video, I want to make the best version of that video I can one time and then never have to make it again. Or, just stuff like that. I want to do it one time, never have to do it again. But with the subscription service, it's like I don't really own it. They're letting me use their stuff. And I already have a problem with it, but I have a bigger problem because Nintendo, just the way that they've done things, all of their games, um, first party stuff, all of it, they've been really really good at being backwards compatible. So like a lot of the stuff just straight up works. A lot of it just does. If you just plug this in, plug some random controller into some random system, a lot of the times it works. I remember reading some article recently that said um, someone tried, I forget what exactly it was, but someone tried plugging like a GameCube controller with an adapter into the Switch or something like that, and it just worked.
Yeah.
And Nintendo, that was just an accident. Nintendo was like, huh, well, so it does work. Um, and just because they've been so good about that, and if they're that good about making things backwards compatible, where things work accidentally, they could easily release those games in a collection or even just by themselves. And you don't even have to give us the games physically. That you could sell each of the Nintendo NES games that are on Nintendo Switch Online. You could sell each of those one-time purchase digital only for $10, and they would make millions. People would buy the whole collection, which is it's more than 10 games, which is $100 right there, and that's only one person. And there's millions of people that would do that.
Well, and it also frustrates me too because Wii U had that. You could buy them on Wii U.
Right? You could do it on Wii U.
And now you can't on Switch. It just frustrates me so much. You can't give me the excuse that the Switch isn't powerful enough. I mean, it is. It can
Yeah.
do it. People hack these devices. That's why I think for emulation and really playing old games, I hate to say it, but because of the way economics of getting into game collecting is right now, it really is just best to do emulation for I would say really anything up to like PS1. It's really just worth to do that. Which is sad. I think as an industry, they're still learning. I mean, this always online, digitally connected point in time really wasn't a thing until like 10 years ago, right? So I will give them a little bit of credit for saying like, these titles, especially in the 360, PS3, original Wii era, they were kind of this in-between state where the game was actually on the disc and, converting everyone over to digital game purchases. We had to learn a lot there. And I think today, the industry's done a lot better about respecting if you buy something, you really do own it, whether it's physical or digital. But Limited Run tries to do that as well. They try to put all the latest patches on the carts. A lot of Switch collectors, I'm sure you know this, they will flat out refuse to buy a game on Switch physically, or I guess just in general, if it's a cart and it'll still say like download required on the box.
Yeah.
They'll just say, I won't buy this.
I don't like doing it either.
There are some games I think you have to do it, like Borderlands Collection, for example. There's no way you can fit all three, those two, it's 3 games, and all the DLC on there. Same with like BioShock Collection, the GTA trilogy. I mean, there's a lot that just wouldn't fit on one cart. So I think you kind of have to give it a little bit of grace. But anyway, as Forrest Gump would say, that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. I think overall, the preservation of video games could be better, but I think there's a good starting point. It seems to be heading in the right direction with all the backwards compatibility. Like it's like Sony and Microsoft, they're starting to figure it out and really nail it. I think Nintendo is just lagging behind a little bit. They need to really fix that. I think once they do though, and I think they will, they're gonna be they're gonna be dangerous. They're gonna have so many good. It's gonna be another golden age.
Yeah, it is. Well, Speaking of, I guess some of the things that we love and cherish as we talk about throughout the show,
Hmm.
what would you say some of your rarest physical games are? Like something you're most proud of. I'm going to combine kind of the two questions: our favorite physical games and our rarest physical games.
Yeah. So one of my rarest physical games is The Messenger, um, published by Devolver Digital. It's a game by Sabotage Studio. That game it always goes instantly, and it's a brilliant game too. I won't go into the story if you're want to play it eventually, but such a good game, and it was physically released by Special Reserve Games, who do such a good job. So the combination of being one of the one of my top 10 favorite games of all time and the high quality physical edition it got, um, definitely The Messenger is one of my favorites, and it's also one of my most valuable. In that same line, Hotline Miami collection from Special Reserve Games is also one of my most valuable. Um, One of my favorite games, Blasphemous. I have the collector's edition of that I actually got from the limited run retail grand opening because I missed it originally. The collector's edition is very, very valuable. So that one is way up there. Blasphemous is also one of my favorite games. Um, Super Mario 3D All Stars, of course. The three 3D Mario games. I mean, uh, how do you get better than that? What's better than that? That's
That's right.
amazing.
That's
That
right.
that that was the dream. I never thought it would happen, and then when it happened, I couldn't believe it. So, of course, that game. Um, any of the games from Special Reserve Games are. I mean, those are at the top of the list of favorites. And really most valuable too. Um, some more of my some more of the rarest physical games I have are like my Game Boy Advanced in box Pokemon games. I've got a Pokemon Sapphire in the box, Fire Red and Leaf Green in the box with the manual and everything. I also have Heart Gold and Soul Silver for the Nintendo DS, both in the box and both with their working Pokewalkers, which is very valuable. And then on
Yeah.
top of that, because I pre-ordered it, I got a pre-order bonus special figurine, one of Lugia and one of Ho-Oh. Which, as far as I did, I tried to do some research to figure out how valuable those were, and I couldn't really find them alone. I did find um a it was weird. It was like I couldn't tell if it was a Japan release or not, but it included the figurine, um, and it goes now for like over $1,000. So that one is the Heart Gold or Soul Silver with the figurine and the Pokewalker. Those might be my most valuable games that I have. But what about you? Let's hear some of your favorites, some of your most
Yeah.
valuable.
Let me see. There's a lot. So I actually don't know why or how they survived all this long. And I think it's just because I put them under my bed when I was like right after I bought the game and it sat there for 15 years. But I actually have the
15 years.
yeah, I have the box and the manual and instructions and everything for Pokemon Leaf Green, Fire Red, and Emerald.
Mm,
And that
Emerald is I am jealous of that one because that's my first Pokemon game. Always will hold a special place in my heart, but
yeah,
I only have the cartridge.
it's my according to the Game Eye app, that's my most valuable piece, and I mean that's obviously just because that it's called it's CIB, which is case instruction booklet.
Hmm.
I'm trying to actually go to my collection here and filter by price. Yeah, so like Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green are all 1, 2, and 3. When we went to Limited Run earlier, I knew that the Jack and Daxter games, there's four of them, one, two, three, and then they did a combat racing game. They were all made by Naughty Dog on PS2. That
Mm-hmm.
ultimately was ported to PS3. That's called the Jack and Daxter Collection,
Mm-hmm.
and then they got ported again to PS4. So they've never been really remastered. They've just been ported.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that they're available on PS4. I think that's part of their PS2 on PS4 program they did once upon a time that wasn't really all that successful, but that's how Limited Run kind of got in and was able to do a physical release of all four of those. So I
Mm-hmm.
picked up actually all four of them. We were at the store. So Jack and Daxter is way up there, and it's mostly the Pokemon games.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course Limited Run stuff shoots way up there as well.
Oh yeah.
Um, I also some of my favorite physical games kind of include the Killzone trilogy on PS3.
Mm.
That's not necessarily particularly valuable, but I found it at a like a pawn shop where a lot of people just trade in everything they have for some quick cash, and
Mm-hmm.
the owner of that pawn shop sold it to me for like $2, and so
Wow.
I got a huge return on that one. And then
You sure did.
like Test Drive Even Destruction, I bought that on PS2 when I was a kid, and I still have it. It's a great game, and it's starting to go up in value. And Need for
Mm-hmm.
Speed Most Wanted on 360, and
Mm.
Dragon Ball Z Budokai on PS2. Um, for Switch, I can't really tell you what my favorite physical game is on that. It probably hilariously is probably going to be like Skyrim or something, or even
Mm-hmm.
some of the Assassin's Creed games.
Hey, Skyrim is a good game.
It's wonderful. Interestingly enough, though, some of my rarest or most valuable stuff in my collection are some of the guidebooks. Like, I have the I have the guidebook for Skyrim Legendary Edition, and
Mm.
it's a hardback, and it's got some ribbon book holders, and it's got like it had a poster, and it had a cutout of a map as well, and
Wow.
I've
Yeah, and
kept it in
all that
impeccable
stuff, I'm
shape.
sure.
Yeah, I mean, according to the Game I app, that's worth a lot. eBay kind of confirmed that as well, and
Mm-hmm.
I have the Witcher 3 Collector's Edition guide as well. So, I like to kind of pick up strategy guides. That's kind of like a meta
Yeah.
collecting thing that I'll do when I go to like Second and Charles, because they're really cheap, and I know I'll never really look at them, but it's nice to have them on a shelf and just look at look at them from time to time.
All right. Yeah. The guidebooks for those games sometimes are just as valuable or more valuable than the actual game.
Right. And
I've got a book called the Ammonomicon, and it's a direct replica of an in-game book for Enter the Gungeon. Um, and that one is way more valuable than the game itself. It sold for, I think I bought mine for $80 in a second chance sale, and they go for anywhere from $600 to $800
wow.
these days. Yeah.
What about some games that you think need to go physical? We're kind of coming up on our allotted time for this
Mm-hmm.
episode, so I think a good way to kind of wrap this up is kind of dream and say, what's something out there that we would love to get a physical release.
Yes. So first of all of the NES or SNES games or N64 games, all of the ones on Nintendo Switch Online, just make those a collection. NES collection, just release them all. In N64 collection, release them all. SNES collection. I would buy that so fast. I would probably buy two of them, and I don't ever buy two games. Um, and Portal, I love Portal. Those games I would love to see physical. So my first dream was achieved. They came to the Switch. Now we need to keep going. Keep the ball rolling. They need to come out physically for the Switch.
Right.
Yeah, those are really my those are my dreams right now. And I guess an honorary mention would be um, Super Mario Galaxy 2.
Yeah.
Why that's not on the 3D All Star Collection, I don't know. Maybe it'll come as an update later. Who knows? But that's what I'm dreaming about. What about you?
It's really hard for me to say because the way I currently am physically with collecting is I think I'm just going to be collecting games that are already released physically. Because I think moving forward, I'm going to really pivot into Steam, but still embrace physical collecting on platforms I already own.
Mm-hmm.
So the only one I could really come up with was Psychonauts 2. It's a recent release from Double Fine. It's I
Mm-hmm.
haven't played it yet, but it's allegedly like a masterpiece. For
Yeah, that's
some
what I've heard.
reason, it doesn't have a physical release. But I think I would love to see. I think it's weird that limited run.
Actually,
Oh yeah.
I might blow your mind here.
Mm.
I have a physical version on Xbox.
Psychonauts 2
Psychonauts 2.
on Xbox One.
Let me see here. It looks like Xbox One. Xbox Series X, Xbox One, yep, or PS4.
Well, I mean, it's available only I thought it was only available digitally.
I can see it right now on I am 8-bit.
Really?
Yeah. Dream come true.
Wow, that's is it for sale right now? Wow, there it is.
Pre-order.
Wow, that's pretty. Wait a second. Can you only buy the collector's edition?
I'm not sure. I haven't looked that much yet. That might be the only
Games.
edition.
Well, that's kind of ridiculous, but cool at the same time.
Yeah. So, and again, that's I am 8-bit. Their prices are quite high.
Does it say when this pre-order ends? Yeah, see, I don't know. I think
I
in
don't know.
terms of collector's editions, this is actually kind of crap. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like what, stickers and like some lithographs? Like
Yeah.
that's it?
Yeah, it's a bit disappointing. I thought there was a single edition that you could get. I just clicked the
Well, it's actually
like
kind
this.
of cool if you look at the details. It's like includes both Psychonauts 2 and the original Psychonauts on separate discs. That's
Oh,
cool. I don't care who you are. That's cool. So
that is cool.
limited run. I think the original Psychonauts got ported to PS4, if I remember right. And limited run does a physical of that. I don't. You might have to correct me on that one. Well, that's cool that's happening. Honestly,
Yeah, it's progress.
I can't really think of anything like something that's currently available only digitally that I want to see physically because
Mm-hmm.
I mean ultimately if it's just digitally I probably would just buy it on Steam.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my answer kind of sucks.
No, it's there. I have another one. I want Cuphead physical.
That's a great game.
Especially because of the nature of Cuphead. You know, it's supposed to look like a 1930s, 1920s old cartoon, right? And back then, like everything is physical. There's no digital. The technology is just being invented. That's back in typewriter day. You know, so like that game deserves to be physical.
Yeah.
Just because of that, because of it's supposed to be replicating oldness, you know.
Yeah, it's a great game. I heard it's really hard too.
Right, yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's a great choice as well. Maybe I'll come up with a better answer on a later episode, but
Yeah, maybe on the next
yeah,
episode.
that's right. But for now, I guess now I have nothing because Psychonauts 2 is there. I really got to
Hey,
consider about buying this or not. That really
right, yeah, I didn't mean to completely destroy your answer, but also,
actually, you know what? I'm correcting myself for what I said earlier. Later down on this description here, it actually says Psychonauts 2005 is an exclusive disc release for this collector's edition.
wow.
So I guess it wasn't published by Limited Run.
I thought it was.
I thought it was too.
That rings a bell.
See, I got to figure out how you spell it. So I'll just copy this. Psychonauts.
Copy paste for the win.
Copy pasta. Psychonauts PS4. I mean, yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Limited run here on eBay. So it's obviously there. I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I don't either.
Okay, well, I think this is a decent stopping point. What I guess kind of some closing thoughts are is that what I love about being a collector is that there's no predefined ways to collect. There's no systems that you have to collect for. I mean, you don't have to go after these limited games like how you and I do, and you can still just kind of enjoy what you go after. And the pricing maybe a little bit out of whack right now, but it's still fun to do and still fun to collect for.
Right. I think the future is bright for physical video games and really all physical media. You're seeing things like, vinyl records. They're having a resurgence lately.
Yep.
So I think even that is a great sign for physical video games in the future. And the fact that so much interest is growing for this hobby, for this industry, this market. So I think the future is bright, and anyone can start for any console. If you just love video games, just get them physically. There's nothing like holding the game in your hands.
Right. And, kind of get around all of these problems you may have with digital licenses that we may have in the future. So it's great. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you're watching this on Respawn Arcade, please look forward to more about retro and nostalgic video games on the channel. And please check out Pancake Jr.'s channel. I guess vice versa if someone's watching on your channel.
Yes, I was about to say, I'm going to hit you with the no you this time.
That's right.
Yeah, if you're watching on my channel, definitely comment your thoughts about this. I want to hear what you guys think. If you're from Team Respawn, welcome. I'm Pancake Jr. I'm Jake. We are both nerds. We're both nerds who are we're just idiots. We don't know what we're doing.
Yep. Small
but here
brains.
we are. Yep.
I love to know if the audience really provides some positive feedback on this. I love to continue making more. So if the series does continue, which I think it will, there'll be a playlist for you to check out all the episodes. So please look forward to that.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. Jake, you're a legend, and we'll see you next time.
See you later.